I'd like to begin this meeting with very unusual message. Thanks to our staff that changed the chair so we don't have to worry about falling back. And secondly, the microphone works. Yay. Yeah, that's it. And also, yeah, that's true. And also, congratulations to our colleague Scott Moffett on his newborn was this morning, early this morning. So, yeah, so that's why he's not here, Scott. So, I didn't ask. Sorry, I didn't ask. But I didn't ask, but what I know, he beat Derek Moody. Derek has 4 kids and Scott has 5 now. So that was the statement to me this morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Eli Al-Shantiri. I'm the chair of the Agriculture Rural Affairs Committee. I'd like to call our meeting to order for Thursday, June 6, 2019. Declaration of interest. None. Confirmation of minute meeting of April 4th, 2019 of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. Okay, thank you. So we do have a statement to read. Okay, thank you, Mark. This is a public meeting to consider the proposal comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 7, 9 to 13 on today's agenda. For the item just mentioned, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendment are adopted may appeal the matter to the local planning appeal tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the local planning appeal tribunal if council does not adopt the amendment within 150 days of receipt of the application for zoning and 210 days for an official plan amendment. A comment sheet is available at the door for anyone wishing to submit written comment on these amendments. So we'll go through our consent agenda and then we'll come back to items we do have item number 1. We have a presentation from our friends and colleagues from Winchester and District Memorial Hospital. We'll hold this item. Item number 2, postponed and deferred. That's the amendment to the engineering report for Van Gaal Municipal Drain. I believe we will hold. So Councillor Gower can move amendments as well.
We do have a speaker as well.
Oh, sorry, we do have a speaker now. Okay. So we'll come back to that item. I believe we have a speaker, Graham Green. Is Mr. Green in the room? Oh, you're at that. Okay, all right. Okay, item number 3, status update, Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee inquiries in motion for the period ending 18 April 2019. I don't believe we have any. So the Agricultural Rural Affairs Committee received this report for information. On the item received? Thank you. Item number 4 is K&L petition, appointment of engineer. So also I believe we have a speaker for item 4. We'll hold item 4. Item number 5, commemorative naming proposal for Ian McDonald Pavilion. Okay, thank you very much. Also, we have item 6, commemorative naming proposal for Clarence Muscle Ball Diamond, and I want to congratulate Councillor DeRose working with the Muscle family. They have a long history in our community in Osgood. So thank you, Councillor DeRose, for the recognition. The item. Okay, thank you. Item number 7, zoning bylaw amendment, cannabis production facilities. I believe we have speaker. No speakers.
Well, Mr. Dion, I'm not sure.
Is Mr. Dion here? But you're in support of the report if we carry it, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any amendment?
Boland as well.
And Mr. Boland here as well?
No.
No, I didn't see Mr. Boland.
So he doesn't want to speak?
You don't need to speak, right, Mr. Dion? Or you like to speak?
I would like to speak.
You like to speak. Okay, we'll hold item 7 then. Thank you. Item number 8, Rural Residential Land Survey 2017-18 update. That the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee received this report for information. On the item? Received? Thank you. Item number 9, zoning bylaw amendment 2113 River Road. that the Agriculture Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 for part of 2113 River Road for the purpose of zoning a portion of the lands from agriculture subzoning 2 AG2 to agriculture subzone 5 AG5 to prohibit residential uses on a retained farmland as detailed in document 2. Also that the Agricultural Affairs Committee approve the consultation detail section of this report be included as a part of. On the item? Carried. Thank you. Item number 10, zoning bylaw 3250 Old George Street. They already named a next street after George DeRose, I guess. Item number 1, the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 for 3250 Old George Street to permit site-specific zoning amendment as a detail in document 2. Item 2, the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approved the consultation detail section of this report be included as a part of the brief explanation. On the item? Carried. Thank you. Item number 11, zoning bylaw amendment, part of 4344 Ninth Line Road. The Agricultural Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 for part of 4344 Ninth Line Road for the purpose of rezoning portion of the land from agriculture AG and agriculture subzone 1 AG1 to agriculture subzone A AG4 to prohibit residential uses on a retaining farmland as detailed in document 2. Item number 2, that the Agricultural Affairs Committee approve the consultation detail section of this report to be included as a part brief explanation. On the item, carried. Thank you. Item number 12, again zoning bylaw amendment for 4205 Nixon Drive in Osgood. Item number 1, the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve an amendment of zoning bylaw 2008-250 for 4205 Nixon Drive for the purpose of rezoning a portion of the lands from agriculture subzone 3 AG3 to agriculture subzone 7 AG7 to prohibit residential uses on retained farmland as detailed in the document 2. Item number 2, the Agricultural Affairs Committee approved the consultation detail section of this report be included as a part of brief explanation. On the item? Carried. Item 13, zoning bylaw amendment 6067 First Line Road in Rideau Goulburn. Item 1, that Agriculture Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 for 6067 First Line Road for the purpose of rezoning the land from rural countryside zone RU and mineral aggregate reserve zone exception 7 MR to rural residential zone exception, rural residential zone exception 2R and rural residential zone exception 3R and open space zone 01 facilitate the development of the conservation subdivision, and that planning committee approve the consultation detail section of this report be included as a part of the brief explanation and summary of written or oral public submission. On the
Now
item?
we have Bill speaking, but he's in
and-
agreement.
So we do have a speaker, but I believe the speaker is in agreement. Mr. Bill Holzman, are you here?
Yes.
Are you in agreement if the committee carry this item, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right, on the item?
Carried.
Thank you, and Mr. Holzman, thank you for attending our meeting. You don't need to speak. Oh, you can take care of that. We don't have in-camera meeting, but we have information previously distributed. The Ottawa Rural Clean Water Program 2018 Annual Report. Can we receive those information? See? We do have a new item or additional item. I think Councillor DeRose maybe we can deal with that item right now because I don't believe it's controversial. So this item in the past was, is called Bylaw 2013-199, temporary all-terrain vehicle and other vehicles. I'm gonna, if with the committee's agreement, we can add this item as additional item and let Councillor Derouz read the motion. Are we in agreement? Okay, so Councillor Derouz, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, ARAC, approved the addition of this item for consideration by the committee at June 5th, 2019 meeting. Pursuant Section 89.3 of the procedure bylaw, as the bylaw in question, temporary all-terrain vehicles and other vehicles has expired. Whereas the Agriculture Rural Affairs Committee, ARAC, approved bylaw on June 26, 2013, permitting the use all-terrain vehicles, ATVs, and motorized snow vehicles on certain city roads and road allowances in Osgood Ward 20 on a trial basis, bylaw 2013-199, and whereas council approved 2 previous extensions to the bylaw, with the most recent expiring on January 31st, 2019, and whereas prior to formalizing the trail system identified in temporary bylaw, staff are required to report back to ARAC with an evaluation of the pilot, and whereas the ward councillor and staff continue to work with ATV and snowmobile clubs to determine whether shared use and continuation of the trail system is feasible, given maintenance and operational challenges the city in this past winter. Therefore, be it resolved that the bylaw be extended until December 1st, 2019 to facilitate resolutions between stakeholders and allow staff to report back to ARAC with recommendation in November 2019. Mr. Chair, this is just to amend the timing negotiation between the ATV and Snowmobile Club. I know that we've been talking about it since 2013, and I'm hoping this will be the last expansion because we really need to address those issues on the snowmobile and ATV trails. As you know, that our winter has been lots challenged, and we don't want to see any incident or accident on our trail, and making sure that each group have their own fair share on the trail between snowmobiler and ATVer. And I'm confident that now staff and I were going to be working with the ATV and the Snowmobile Club because we need to set the precedence in that motion and making sure moving forward our enthusiastic snowmobiler and ATVer are protected on road allowances and road owned by the city. So I'd like to pass this motion.
Well, first of all, before we can move this motion, I'd like to add my comment on being someone who's been working on this from day one, and even before 2013, there's quite a bit of interest in the rural area working together, and that's why we choose Osgood to be the pilot project. But more and more, we're seeing the lack of cooperation actually in our area. The ATV, they're ticketed if they are on a snowmobile trail, and we need to find a way have those folks working together before this pilot project become to an end. So I echo your sentiment, Councillor, and I hope we can find a way we can all work together on this one, because the rest of the rural area are waiting to see what this pilot project going to be come up with. So, on the motion on an extension of the pilot project, Carrie? Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Derouz. So go now to our first item, which is the presentation on Winchester and District Memorial Hospital, and I'd like to call Mr. Charlie Boland. Charlie used to be in my area in Ann Pryor and was stolen by Winchester and it's been a number of years now in Winchester. So you have, I believe, 5 minutes to address the committee, and I believe you have a presentation, Mr. Boland. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Charlie Boland. I'm the president and CEO of Winchester Hospital. As you probably know, as I'm sure you do, Winchester is a rural and agricultural community that shares a municipal border with the city of Ottawa. And the hospital is actually a resource that serves many residents of the city of Ottawa, predominantly in Councillor Derouz's ward, and we have a lot of interaction with Councillor Derouz, but also our patients come from throughout the city. So my intent today is just simply to inform you and let you know what we're doing for many of your residents and a bit more about the hospital, and invite you at any time if you have any questions or comments, please give us please feel free to contact us. So the title is WDMH Pride because I'm going to largely talk about good things and things we're very proud of. And I'll figure this out. Okay. First thing for our hospital, the thing that pervades it is our commitment to our community, to the patients we serve, and our commitment to making the hospital one of the best ever, best anywhere. We're committed to our patients, to serve them with compassion, either by ourselves or in conjunction with community agencies or other hospitals like the Ottawa Hospital. We pursue excellence in everything we do, and all this is focused on providing compassionate excellence. Here's a snapshot of the thousands of Ottawa residents we serve each year through a variety of services. We have comparatively short wait times, so as I say, in many specialties. So a lot of people come from Ottawa to access our services, predominantly from the south end, but literally from throughout the city. One of the most difficult questions I have, or trickiest questions I have, is how many people work at the hospital, and I'd say probably quite a few commute from the city of Ottawa. We have our paid staff. We have predominantly doctors who are paid by the government and OHIP. We have volunteers who aren't paid directly, and we have quite a few students and trainees. So all in all, 500-600 people at the hospital, and again, quite a few come from the city of Ottawa. There's some of our stars, but just a few of them. We, like any big organization, we have a strategic plan that's got 4 pillars. One is, of course, to provide the best quality services that we possibly can, and I'll show you some evidence of that. The other is to collaborate, and if you're aware, it's all in the news, these Ontario health teams are just the latest version of collaboration within healthcare. Just like there's a single taxpayer, there's a single patient who often has to get access from a variety of services, and certainly the hospital plays a lead role in making sure that's as cohesive as possible. We serve the people I just told you about, the 600 or 700 people who provide a dynamic workplace as they can provide services to the people we serve. And we're quite accountable. We've had 13 consecutive years of balanced budgets, which is a rarity in healthcare and public service, so we're quite proud of that. Every hospital in Ontario has an external company that monitors and surveys its patient satisfaction. So the hospital can't be seen as cooking the books or manipulating the data, and we're quite proud of the results we have, and we get it every 3 months. It's quite high, and again, this is not the hospital, this is an external company. Obviously, in the eyes of the people we serve, the patients, we're doing a lot of the good things. That all said, this is not to suggest we think we're anywhere close to perfect, even in the 100%. We do make mistakes. We can make improvements, and we welcome any type of input, any type of communication that tells us where we could do better. But as I said, in the eyes of the people we serve, we're doing quite well, and we're quite proud of it. Some more of the stars. One of our secret weapons, which isn't secret and it's not really a weapon either, is we started with a community of patients just a few years ago to tell us how we're doing. It was easy to put some papers in front of them and say, we're writing these things to send to our patients, help us make them more understandable. But these patients actually now help us develop new services. They help us in our ethics. They help us put together things like strategic plans, and you can see some of the things we do here. It's really important that as much as we're in and around patients and we have these thousands of surveys and all that type of thing, is to get the patient voice. And we've moved actually having from a single patient committee. If you're familiar at all with hospitals, we have all kinds of committees, and now we have patients on every single committee. So it's really made a difference in terms of how we operate and how we provide our services. I've told you a little bit of how I think we're really good, and we think we're really good, but it's nice to have external organizations come and confirm that. So we have on an annual, and it's more often than that, accreditors come in, scrutinies, government inspectors that give us thumbs up or full marks on whether it's laboratory, pharmacy, a lot of x-ray, diagnostic imaging, our teaching program, and the umbrella is the last point there, which is Accreditation Canada, which comes in every 4 years and assesses the quality of care of patients and how safe we keep them. And we received pretty much every time they come in their highest award, which is exemplary standing. As you well know, in the last many years now, not just several years, government funding hasn't been what it used to be. And in spite of that, governments no longer come along to hospitals and say, here's a big fat check, start a new program. But we've still been able to add services. We have an inpatient program where people, often seniors who take somewhere between 20, 30, 40 medications each day, they come in and in a very gradual and supervised method, we can take them off some of those medications long term. And that's fewer interactions and a much better state of health. So that's one of the new services we provided. Restorative care is where seniors are in their home and maybe it seems like they're ready to go to a retirement or a long-term care home, but maybe with 2 or 3 weeks of activity, physiotherapy, good nutrition, that can be delayed by 6 or 7 months. We have a program like that also. We have new clinics to assess vision, to assess lung capacity. We're expanding our urology program. And we started off with a sleep clinic, which obviously happens at night. And we had 2 or 3 beds, and now we've tripled at that size. So that's serving a large area. We are a small hospital, yet we have a research program that we started about 4 years ago. And the whole idea is for rural medicine, to make sure we're doing things well. And if we are doing things well, we'll publish and tell the world. And if we can figure out how to improve things, we'll do that first and publish and tell the world. So I could put on pages and pages of our projects. Some of them are just how to better speak to patients, how to best treat children and youth who have mental health issues that come into our rural ER where we don't have a psychiatrist on staff and that type of thing. And it's allowed us to attract some funding also. Just a few other things. A few years ago, our maternity program was identified as the #1 in Ontario. We've since slipped to 2 or 3, I think, but it's still the #1 in the region. We surveyed our physicians using a survey that's used by all other hospitals in Ontario a couple of years ago, and it turns out our physicians are the most engaged and satisfied of any of those hospitals that use that survey. We have a chemotherapy, a cancer care satellite of the Ottawa Hospital, and many smaller hospitals in the province have these satellites of the large centers. Ours is the largest in Ontario. What that means is if someone comes to us and they have a diagnosis of cancer, we have the practice, we have the skills to provide as high a standard of cancer care as any other facility in Ontario. We have several medical buildings. One of them is called a community care building. We have many tenants there. We're somewhat one-stop shopping in Winchester area. We have on the campus, we have a hospital, we have a long-term care home, we have mental health counseling, physicians' offices, physiotherapy, laboratory, outpatient, and several other services. I mentioned earlier our financial stability. And we're also one of the largest computer centers within a hospital in Eastern Ontario. Within our computer center, we house services and applications and systems that serve all of Eastern Ontario. There's a couple quite key applications. One's called eConsult and one's called eReferral that save doctors playing telephone tag to try and get additional services for their patients, and that's housed in Winchester. We also have right next door, as I mentioned, we have a long-term care home that's ancient. Was built 40 years ago and looks like it was built 80 years ago, and we've been in the process of trying to get government approval to build a new one. We actually have some land, and as you can see, that's the campus as it exists now, and in the green is where we're going to have our new home. About 10% of those clientele come from the city of Ottawa. So that's a little bit about the hospital that we're really proud of and the long-term care home, and just wanted to inform, but happy to answer any questions you may have.
First of all, thank you very much for addressing the committee, and I believe Councilor DeRose have a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Sholi, for being here this morning. I know that we always have a discussion and talking about serving our community, but I just want to let you know that on behalf of our community, specifically people in Metcalfe and all Osgoode Ward, we thank the Winchester Memorial Hospital always. They always give us good service. I know they look after our community, and we're very happy with the service that your facility, the hospital, and your professional staff. And I know that most of the volunteers also, I do have lots of volunteers from my community. They come out and volunteer. So, and I know from personal experience, you serve our community, you serve our family, you serve me personally, because when I had this agreement with the chainsaw, I remember a couple of years ago that you look after after me very well. So on behalf of our community and the resident of the city of Ottawa, we thank you for all the service you do, not only on the hospital side, also on the Dundas side, that the long-term facility that we have,
Right.
and then we work collectively together. So thank you very much for taking time from your busy schedule to be here and address the committee, and we appreciate all the work you do in our community.
My pleasure.
And next time, please try to give the councillor course in the chainsaw
Yeah.
operation.
I was just going to say, be careful with those chainsaws.
Mr. Vice Chair?
Yeah, anecdotally, I'm in the west end of Ottawa, Stittsville, Canada, and we've heard from hospitals in Carleton Place and Almont, for example, who are seeing more and more residents from suburban areas of Ottawa using their emergency facilities in particular. I was just curious if you're seeing a similar thing in the south end, more suburban or residents who are using the services at the Winchester Hospital.
We do. We have people coming from all parts of Ottawa. Maybe we've got fairly short wait times in ER and our surgeries and that type of thing. It's not huge numbers, but it's definitely a gradual increase.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ball, and thank you for all you do in our community, serving our community first in the west, and now you're in the south end of the city. Again, thank you so much for your
My
presentation
pleasure.
today.
Thanks.
On a presentation received? Received. Thank you. We go to item number 2, which is amendment to the engineering report for Van Gaal Municipal Drainage, and we have Mr. Green to speak about this. Mr. Green? Sorry, who was that? Well, you can come forward a little bit down so we can hear what you're saying. It's okay. I heard you don't need to speak. That's okay. Okay. So we do have a technical amendment, and my colleague, Vice Chair, will move those amendments. But before, I think Councillor Gower has a question for Mr. Ryan, I believe. Is that correct?
I do. Morning, Dave. We had correspondence to the committee from Mr. Ken McRae, and he had mentioned some discrepancies in some of the background reports, specifically to Hobbs Municipal Drain was one of the issues. I wanted to know if those maps, how material those discrepancies might be to the report that we're being asked to, that we're looking at today, and if any changes might need to be made before this goes to council.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the drain he was referring to, it's the location plan and the staff report. He's referring to the drain that's outside the watershed. We're not dealing with the Hobbs drain in this report. It was just there kind of for reference to show where it is in location to the actual drain, to the Van Gaal drain. So it's not relevant per se to this report. It's a different drain altogether.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Vice Chair, you do have a motion to read as amendment to the engineer's report for the Van Gaal drain, if you'd like to read it.
I do. Whereas assessed landowners for the Van Gaal drain had previously raised concerns regarding the engineer's report for the Van Gaal drain, and whereas the developer has met with the concerned assessed landowners and they have proposed certain amendments to drawings referenced in the engineer's report, and whereas the appointed engineer is of the opinion that the proposed amendments to the drawings will not affect the drainage work or the lands of any assessed landowners other than those who have concluded agreements with the developer. Therefore, be it resolved that all references to the drawing completed by NAC Design Strategies entitled Planting Plan 3, Revision 8, dated January 2015, be replaced with the drawing by NAC Design Strategies entitled Planting Plan 3, Revision 9, dated May 30th, 2019. All references to the drawing completed by Coldwater Consulting entitled Sections Village of Richmond Channel Realignment, Revision 5, dated June 5th, 2016, be replaced with the drawing by Coldwater Consulting Limited entitled Sections Village of Richmond Channel Realignment, Revision 6, dated May 27th, 2019. And all references to the drawing completed by Coldwater Consulting entitled Van Gaal Drain, Village of Richmond Channel Realignment, Revision 5, dated June 5th, 2016, be replaced with the drawing by Coldwater Consulting entitled Van Gaal Drain, Village of Richmond Realignment, Revision 6, dated May 27th, 2019.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. So on the amendment by the Vice Chair, is it carry? On the amendment, on the report, carry as amended? Okay, thank you very much, folks, and item number 4 is the KNL petition appointment of engineer. Dave, is that you speaking about this, or we have a speaker? We'll go to the speaker right away, okay? So we have 2 speakers here.
Yeah, there's
Call
Colin
them.
Brennan from the National Capital Commission.
Okay.
And Marcel Denon and Faith Bacchia.
No, okay. You have to have her first. Was she first?
Yeah.
Is it on? Okay.
It is on, and you do, ma'am, have 5 minutes. I know you've been in the front of the committee before, so please
It's been
proceed.
quite a while. I have had
Okay.
accessibility problems now, make it difficult to come.
That's okay.
My name is Faith Blackyer. I'm from Glencairn. I've been involved in the K&L issue since 2010 when I did a report on the stormwater in Beaver Pond, when everyone else was running around saying, save the trees for the Beaver Pond forest. I am one of the interested persons that Tim Mark identified in the April 2014 kitchen table meeting before the ERAC meeting, and the other 3 people couldn't come today. That you weren't told about the Section 65 report, but K&L had initially asked for a Section 78. It was changed to a Section 65, and the engineer's report was tabled in 2016. The engineer identified many problems with the infrastructure all the way down to the railway on NCC lands, and the city decided they had to do a Section 78 report to address the liability. The pictures you're seeing up there on the screen is the Canada North Business Park, which is where the main damage can be done, and the pictures that are showing the flooding show you how much flooding there is just with existing conditions. I had to use the 2015 mapping the city had done because the Mississippi Valley floodplain mapping, it wasn't very clear to show it on the slides. But there's a lot more on their slides, and they included phase 7 and 8. Okay. This is a map which shows the entire system. You can see there are quite a few tributaries, except for the one that's running across the top left on a diagonal. That's Shirley's Brook, and that's where they're trying to bring water into the Kizil system. That system goes all the way up to the Ottawa River and is influenced by the Ottawa River water levels, so any floodplain mapping or studies that have been done may be out of date now because of the 2019 flooding. 2 of those tributaries are not included in any of the modeling. Staff report objective is to provide legal and sufficient outlet for K&L phases 7 and 8. K&L right now has legal outlet because the top of the drain is, or the top part is the water course, but they don't have sufficient outlet into the drain. And phase 7 and 8, all they need is to connect to the Beaver Pond so that they can get to the drain. The MVCA floodplain mapping says that K&L wants to split the flows. Drainage engineers don't normally deal with split flows. They deal with just runoff from agricultural lands. The Section 10 drainage engineer needs to do the following: establish the drainage area There are some inconsistencies in the various reports and studies that have been done. Identify the legality, feasibility, and impact of diverting selected flows and to the Beaver Pond system and extending municipal drain status from the Beaver Pond down to where the municipal drain starts. They're not really sure where it starts. It's hard to tell from the 1973 bylaw exactly where it is, but I believe that it overlaps with it connected originally to the Walter Bowes municipal drain, which hasn't been abandoned. And they need to identify downstream channel characteristics and any changes made or planned to downstream infrastructure. The problems identified by the Section 65 engineer are identified, and there is also a list I've provided later in my presentation, which I won't be putting on the screen, the list of infrastructure changes since then, which are making the currently in process Section 78 report unreliable unless they address those changes. And will also impact the ability of the Section 10 engineer to do the work. Then they have to decide whether to recommend the diversion and extension and identify drainage works and identify costs. It's very likely to be high because Section 65 has already identified $1.8 million just to protect the city from liability, and the Section 78 contract has cost already about $300,000 when council had only approved it for $85,000, plus the cost of any works that one does, and then with the Section 10, another $100,000 plus the cost of any works that they would do. This map is showing you more details on the flooding. It's showing you the from the Beaver Pond right down. The little arrow there on the left is showing the area where the part of the problem is caused by the new channel being put in and not closing off the old. It resulted in the Marsh pumping station and the Marshes Village flooding in 2004. The other one is Shirley's Brook, and there's also flooding downstream on that one, and that's where they're supposed to go.
Can you please wrap up, Faith?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get through.
Okay. It's been over 5 minutes, so.
Okay. So the alternatives that I see it are you can deny the request, or you can defer it, or you can consider abandoning the municipal drain. Abandoning it would be a good idea because the National Capital Commission isn't subject to the drain, and it's also a sewage system. It's not a drain.
Okay, thank you very much, Faith. Any question for the presenter?
I just
Councilor.
wanted to make sure I understand. Your concern is that if the city were to proceed, once we had a report in front of us that the engineer prepares, it would be a legal risk and a financial risk to the city? Is that primarily what your concern is?
If there are problems with the water course, the city doesn't have liability. Like if K&L puts their flow into the water course, K&L is liable. Once it becomes a municipal drain, the city is liable. So if you extend it, then the city will be liable for everything. There's a very long list, which I said I wouldn't show, but it's there. That's the infrastructure changes. It's a very long list of infrastructure changes, and there's a very long list of roads that are overtopped throughout the system all the way down to the Ottawa River. So if you get a Section 10 report coming in and saying, yes, well, they're not going to look at that part of it. They're just going to look at what's from the municipal drain up to the Beaver Pond. If you ultimately approve that, it'll all become the liability of the city to maintain it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? Okay, Councilman.
We had historic floods, Shirley, we had historic floods, sorry, Faith, we had historic floods this spring. We're still dealing with the impact of it. What was the impact in this area that we're discussing here today?
I believe that there was no flooding generally in the city of Ottawa other than along the Ottawa River. I've been monitoring that as well as I monitored the 2017 flooding.
But for the area that we're talking about here,
This area is subject to 100-year storms. The Ottawa River is subject to 100-year storms plus snow melt. from a huge area. So there was no 100-year storm in the system, but if there is, those blue areas on the map are going to be water.
And you said the tributaries that were not indicated on the map, was there any flooding with these, the ones that you referred to?
They go into, those two tributaries go into that area that I showed you on that, that had the little label on the first map. And it's in the Farrar Road area where there's, it's vacant land right now and where the March pumping station is. And there were flooding problems there in 2004, and I believe it also flooded in 2009, that area. And it's because the old channel's still there, and these two other tribs are coming in, and they're not being accounted for. That needs to be resolved.
Okay. I don't think I have another question. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Councilor Meagher. Another question? Thank you very much, Faith, for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker is Mr. Brennan. Mr. Brennan, you're here?
How do you
Okay.
close that for me and turn it?
Mr. Brennan, you have 5 minutes to address the committee. Please go ahead. Put your mic on, just press.
There.
Okay, now it is.
Thank you, Council. I'm Colin Brennan, representing the National Capital Commission as a municipal engineer to provide our comments on this petition. The NCC has been working with, there is an ongoing, as the report included with this petition indicates, there is an ongoing drainage engineer's report in process. The National Capital Commission has been working with Andy Robinson, the drainage engineer, and the City of Ottawa on this file. It is quite a complicated file, given the complications of municipal drains and federal lands, and given the technical complications within the watercourse. There's a long history of problems that the NCC has been studying and trying to remediate for the past 20 years. Given that context, the ongoing work would be disrupted if the KNL petition were approved at this time. The work that's ongoing, if it were completed and issued to council, then this petition could come through and be dealt with in an appropriate timeline, in our view. Given that, the National Capital Commission requests that the committee defer the KNL petition request for a preliminary engineering report on diverting lands from Shirley's Brook watershed into the Kizzel Creek drain and Watts Creek watershed until the existing and ongoing engineering report has been completed and issued to council for either for approval or rejection.
Any question to the delegate, Mr. Brennan? No? You have question?
Just,
No,
my-
to staff,
sorry.
staff, we'll ask staff after, because we do still have one more presenter.
Yeah.
Your question to the presenter?
What we're being asked here is to give the go-ahead for a report. How does that disrupt the NCC's work? How does a study disrupt your work?
So there's an existing study that affects the natural drainage to the Kizzel drain. The conclusions of this study include defining clearly what the watershed boundary is and what lands are serviced by the Kizzel drain and which lands are therefore not serviced implicitly. The petition now involves asking the question, could lands that do not naturally drain in this direction be serviced by that drain? So it effectively reopens the case of that the current engineer's report is trying to close. And so it's a confusing scenario before the current report has been completed to say, well, could it be changed? Of course, while the report, and the same engineer is being asked to work on both files as well.
Okay, thank you.
If I understand you correctly, the study's been going on for 20 years?
sorry, studies have been going on in the watershed for 20 years. The current study, I believe, started in 2018. So
And how long do you anticipate it to take before it's complete?
that may be a better question for Mr. Robinson, but I believe the anticipation is that we'll be complete this year, certainly.
So if we were to defer it, it would only be for, 6 months?
Yes, and I believe folks are hoping the current report can be
Hoping
completed before
that-
that. No, I think the intent is that it's less than 6 months to complete the current report. But yes, the intention and the involved parties, to my knowledge, are all working towards getting the current report completed in a timely fashion.
That question maybe perhaps staff.
Yeah.
I think staff will be able to explain that question better than the presenter. Any other question to the presenter? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Brennan, for your submission.
Thank you.
Marcel, Marcel Denom, Mr. Denom is here? Oh, okay, all right. Well, what we're gonna...
Thank you very much. My name is Marcel Denemy. I represent. My name is Marcel Denemy. I represent KNL. I'm here with Peter Deere, our engineer. So KNL, through our engineer, we filed the application for this petition for, in part, reasons that this diversion of drainage was somewhat approved in 2006 through an OMB report. The motivation for the diversion was in part to not have to build a pond into Trillium Woods. Trillium Woods is a woodlot that's in Canada Lakes that was always proposed to be maintained as a woodlot. So now we do have our ECA for the Phase 9. So Phase 7 and 8 is the next step for us. So the drainage report that's ongoing right now, I guess it was started in 2016. It was approved by this committee in 2016. So it's taken already 2.5 years. It's still not complete. Current state right now is that, as I understand it, the NCC still has not allowed the engineer to finalize some of the work on the site, so they can't go on site to do some geotech. So in essence, the NCC is somewhat part of the cause for the delay in finalizing this report. So all we're trying to do right now is then sort of bring on Phase 7 and 8, which is the next phase for the development. And what this will do, in my mind, is to inform the engineer as to the impact of 7 and 8 being diverted to the Kisel Creek. In our consultant's mind, they've done all the modeling, and in their sort of professional opinion is that there would be very little impact to the diversion.
Any question to Marcel? Okay, thank you very much, Marcel. So now we do have question for staff, but before we go to question to staff, I'd like to clarify this. Right now, Mr. Robinson is not on the file yet, so we can't ask Mr. Robinson, the engineer, to speak because they have not been up. Am I correct?
Not for this particular petition,
Okay.
Chair, but he is appointed on the Kisel drain
On the
for
Kisel
for the
drain, okay.
bottom end, the existing drain.
So can we call him to join you on the table
Sure.
to answer some of the questions? Mr. Robinson,
And there is the technical amendment.
Okay. So, Councillor Meehan first, and we'll start. You have some question for staff, but maybe Mr. Robinson and Dave together, or maybe our legal, you can explain to the committee, this is a preliminary report under Section 10. If you can tell us, the Section 10 of the Drainage Act response, to put it in a context, if you don't mind, from legal perspective.
Correct. So the recommendation before the committee today is to appoint an engineer to write a preliminary report and provide that for consideration that would then come back to this committee.
So will come back for us for approval, what you're saying. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilman. Sorry, I step in, but
I would just, after listening to Ms. Bakri's presentation on her concerns on flooding. Can you address her concerns to me, like for us? Is there anything to what she's fearing?
Just, I could speak a little more to the existing report, and there is floodplain mapping, as she's referred to, and recently been updated by the Conservation Authority. But, so that's in place, and there are areas that are presently flooded and areas that will be flooded in the future. And I think the principle that we're trying to achieve in the existing report is to come up with a solution to mitigate any changes that will occur as a result of the Phase 9 development. They're quite minor at this stage, but nonetheless there's some impact. So what we've come up with is a solution, which we're now discussing with the NCC, to make some channel improvements and add another culvert under the railway tracks, which is a bit of a area that's causing some backup. I think that so that the idea is certainly not to is to end up not solving those problems, because that's not part of what the principle is completely, but is to come up with a solution that doesn't worsen the situation.
And the risk to the municipality that she expressed?
I'd leave that to your legal team to answer.
Just as an opinion, could we see flooding that would ultimately cost us?
Well, again, it's a legal question, which I'll leave there, but from an engineering point of view, what we are looking to do is to provide a solution that does not worsen the situation. I mean, it's not going to take care of any flooding that's there now, and again, that gets into a legal question which is beyond what I should even try to comment on, but the principle is to come up with a solution that will accommodate the work that needs to be done without increasing those risks or liabilities.
And that's possible. You believe it's possible to do that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Now I'm talking about the existing, because we haven't certainly looked at anything else.
I guess it's the question of the petition process, question for staff. Are we under a time frame for when we have to respond? I'm putting this in the context of the request from the National Capital Commission on deferral. Is there a time frame when we have to respond to the KNL petition?
So, Mr. Chair, under the legislation, Council has 30 days from the date it receives a petition to make a decision, to provide a notice of decision. After that time, there's a right of appeal to the tribunal that opens up to the petitioner.
So if we were to defer today, hypothetically, for 6 months, what would be the legal and procedural impact to the city?
Mr. Chair, at that point, there would be a right of appeal to the tribunal that would be available to the petitioner, and the tribunal could consider and either order the city to make a decision or direct council to make the decision that it felt appropriate.
Okay, that's, I think that's enough, yeah.
So we do have a technical amendment. It's going to be moved by the Mr. Vice Chair. So if you can on a technical amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Whereas this report was circulated to staff for comment in accordance with the standard procedure, and whereas the legal comment in the legal implications section of the report was not incorporated into the final report, therefore be it resolved that the comment in the legal implications section of the report be replaced with the following: there are no legal impediments to adopting the recommendation in this report. Okay. This is a motion to correct a editing error in the original report.
Right. On the motion, carry. Okay. On the item. Okay. Thank you very much, folks. Thank you. With that, now we go to what did we have? Yeah, item number Item number 7, I believe we do have, we have a speaker,
And the technical amendment.
and also we do have a technical amendment. What's the name of the speaker?
It's Mr. Dion.
Oh, Mr. Dion to speak about item 7? Oh, okay. Sorry, I forget who it was.
Did you want to, did you add the PowerPoint? Did you want the PowerPoint?
Any display, I just have a couple of little things here that I
Okay, so you don't need the PowerPoint?
no, I don't need PowerPoint, I'm not that technologically
Okay.
advanced, I'm just a farmer.
So, Mr. Dion, you have 5 minutes to address the committee. I believe you know the file, so we don't have to give you background on it, so, on the item 7?
Yes.
Okay. If you press your button, there's a button that says push, okay? All right. No, just touch it. I thought we fixed it.
Hello?
Okay, it's working now.
Okay. Hi, my name is Daniel DeYoung. I'm a tenant farmer with the NCC here in the National Capital Region. We are looking at starting a demonstration farm to raise
Go ahead, push.
public awareness and education surrounding cannabis. How the zoning has been kind of a little bit of a setback for us with the NCC putting a policy in place to either allow or disallow people to grow cannabis on federal lands in Ottawa. So I appreciate you guys making the changes that were required in order for this to happen in such a timely fashion. And there's a couple of things, once these changes are in place going forward, that I'm looking at addressing today. One of them is surrounding the production of hemp, a cannabis plant, different than marijuana. So currently, farmers can process the hemp crops on the farm. Some of the products that we can make are the hemp hearts. This is a product that's sold in Costco right now. And on the farm also, we can press the seeds and make cold pressed hemp seed oil. And this is something that we don't require any licensing for at this point. Now, in the fall, the Cannabis Act came up with some new rules that allow for the extraction of a molecule out of the plant, a CBD molecule, to be extracted. It's similar to this oil here, but it's a little bit different. So for that, we need a processing license. Farmers would like to have the ability to process the hemp for the CBD oil under the Cannabis Act on the farm. The reason for that is it is not logistically feasible to ship the kind of biomass off of the farm to a laboratory that is not equipped to handle all that material. Because a hemp crop, there's a lot of biomass that comes off of the field, and the farmers need to be able to process that in the field to a certain degree before they can ship it to a laboratory for further refinement. So the way it stands right now, we're working with a company in Ottawa locally that's retrofitting shipping containers to have a GMP style laboratory, which would be in alignment with the federal regulations for the processor's license. So in this container, we'll have a lab that could go to the field potentially to do that crude extraction before sending it off to the lab in the city for further refinement. So this is the question that I'm asking is what kind of zoning would be required for a unit like that, like in a shipping container that had all the extraction material. It was approved on the federal level, but now it's like, where does this thing belong I'm of the mind that it should be on the farm where the action is happening to refine it to a point where we can ship it to the laboratories for further refinement, because we can't ship like wagons of material into the city to a laboratory that's not equipped to handle it. So that's the industry's problem right now, I think, or one of many problems that we're facing as it's being developed. So I guess that would be my next question, would be what kind of zoning would be required for a mobile extraction unit that would go to the field and extract the oil from the plant.
Okay. Anything else before because I'm going to ask legal to respond to your question about what kind of zoning we need for. Are you done,
Yes.
Mr. Dion? Okay, so our legal staff, please.
Mr. Chair, thank you. In terms of the specific zoning in this specific case, we would need to consider some of the specific information about the type of activity. Obviously, the city regulates land use, so if the use of the property was for production, it might require different zoning than if it was just outdoor growing of cannabis plants. The current zoning regulates production and growing separately. So there might be a zoning issue there if production activities were happening on a farm that was zoned only for growing uses. So we would invite the public delegate to contact city staff if he has questions about the specific zoning on his site, and we'd be happy to work with him to understand the specific issue.
I think we've made a phone call or two to the city and to Health Canada, and it's not very clear as to...
So, Mr. Dion, so we don't have to have it back and forth with our legal, we asked the question, perhaps if you have concern, maybe you can talk to our legal on the side, and from now till council, but I mean, really what you're submitting today is a question where staff, they can address that, or they can, if committee have a question for Mr. Dion, but after we hear from legal. So my advice, you can meet with legal and talk about this specific question. Hopefully they can help you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. On the item itself, we do have amendment from the Vice Chair. Mr. Vice Chair, if you can read that amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a technical amendment to clarify some of the zoning details in the report. Whereas the report zoning bylaw amendment cannabis production facility proposes an amendment to harmonize the zoning bylaw with federal law by amending Section 97 to regulate production of cannabis for both medical and recreational purposes. And whereas document 1B details the required changes to the recommended zoning, and whereas that since the report was considered at Planning Committee on the 22nd of May, it has been demonstrated that some existing sites would be prevented from continuing a use that they have already started or could cultivate cannabis in a greenhouse without adding new greenhouse buildings. Therefore, be it resolved that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend to Council to amend Document 1B, details of recommended zoning, as follows. Number 1, amend Item 1 on Document 1B, details of recommended zoning, so it reads as follows. Amend Section 2111C by adding the following provisions. Cannabis production facility limited to outdoor cultivation and greenhouse cultivation in a greenhouse that existed as of the date of the passing of this bylaw. Number 2, add the following as Item 3 on Document 1B. Details of recommended zoning, amend Section 240 rural exceptions by amending Exception 857R with provisions similar in effect to the following. A, in column 3, replace the text with cannabis production facility. B, in column 5, replace the words medical marijuana production facility with cannabis production facility. And C, in column 5, add the words maximum total floor area for cannabis cultivation in greenhouses, 65,000 square meters. And be it further resolved that pursuant to the Planning Act, subsection 3417, no further notice be given.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, and that's That's the amendment to item number 7. Item number 7, that Agriculture Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 to permit cannabis production facility uses in AG and RU zoning as detailed in document 1B, detailed and recommended zoning. On first of all, on amendment, Carrie? On the report as amended? Okay, thank you very much, folks, and I believe that would conclude our final item. So we go now to open mic. I don't believe somebody registered for the open mic. Notice of motion for consideration at subsequent meeting. None, we didn't have any. Inquiries, we don't have any. Other business tomorrow is the Food Aid Day, and this is a fundraising for the Ottawa Food Bank, and we have a barbecue from, I believe, from 11 to 2. Ticket is $10. They'll include Works lunch, burger with the soft drink and chips, and I hope you can join us. This is a good fundraising for our food bank, and we have a milking competition or championship or Olympic, whatever you want to call it. I won it more than once, so George Derouz is dying to win it once at least. So I hope you can join us tomorrow and have lunch and have some fun supporting the food bank. With that, I would adjourn this meeting for Agricultural Rural Affairs meeting. So I need a motion to adjourn. So moved by Mr. Vice Chair. We adjourn the AIR Thank you very much, folks. And then we open a meeting. It's called Court of Provision. And I have to read, obviously, I've been appointed to something. Statement to be read by the Chair of Court of Provision at the beginning of a hearing on June 6, 2019 for the O'Keefe Municipal Drain. For the purpose of this hearing, appeals under Section 52 of the Drainage Act by owners of land assessed for drainage works under the engineer's report for the O'Keefe Municipal Drain, entitled Court of Revision Amendment to the Engineer's Report for the O'Keefe Municipal Drain Block C, Station 000 to 0+234, dated November 2018. This court will now convene for the first sitting of the court revision under Section 46 of the Drainage Act. There have been no appeal received by the clerk. Am I correct? Any owner of land assessed under the engineer's report who have not provided written notice of appeal to the clerk in advance of the hearing should identify themselves to the clerk assistant at this time with a request to be heard. Is anyone here to speak about the O'Keefe drainage report? Any landowner within that catchment area? I see none, so we'll read this.
Yep.
So since we have none, at the conclusion of the, which is behind, this court adopted the assessment in engineer's report dated November 2018. The decision rendered by this court may be appealed to the Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs Appeal Tribunal within 21 days of today, June 6, 2019. Sample notice are available from the city drainage superintendent, which is in this case Mr. Ryan, and the extension 25008, and the phone number, the city's number 580-24224. With that, the Court of Revision adjourned. An adjournment, okay? Thank you. Thank you very much, folks.